Up to date now.
All right, so we're going.
Pages, cool.
Okay, cool. So what I also maybe want to do is I'm getting followers on Twitter now.
Oh, cool.
I think we should just turn the Danny Classic handle into the show. It basically is.
Yeah.
And I've been tweeting it out, and I get a lot of. I'm kind of on Liberty Twitter.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm participating in it. And one thing, I got invited yesterday to do a show. It's like, tiny, but I'm gonna do it anyway, and it'll be cool.
Cool.
And they'll promote us and all that stuff.
Yeah, let's do it, man.
And it's funny because this guy, Archaic Skids, he has a show. I forget the name of the show, but it's he kind of came at the. Well, I guess I'll put it this way: what did you? Here's what's posited on Liberty ANCAP Twitter.
Yeah.
Was the Chauvin result a positive or a negative for Liberty? It's a good question.
It's a
right?
very good question,
and it's not as obvious every time. My position is no.
I think no,
but
I think no, not because I necessarily agree with the premise that a cop, an enforcer of state hegemony, is getting a raw deal after enforcing mask mandates and disarming people and writing bullshit citations and tickets or whatever the hell else they're doing.
Correct.
Like, that's obviously good, but like if we're gonna real politic for a minute, like what has more of an effect on regular people's liberty? Like one bad cop, like getting a raw deal, or like setting the precedent that even if it hasn't met the legal standard of justice, if enough people think you did it, you're going to prison anyway. I think that's more damaging.
Okay.
To like individuals. Like I could really care less about like the police and like a cop, like, oh, what happens to cops in jail? Like, I could really care less from that angle, but more like now, any case, like we have the Rittenhouse case coming up soon. And man, that's going to be
for real. It's an excellent segue.
And right now, like, I probably, a week ago would have said what we said 2 weeks ago with Chauvin, that, they wouldn't get him on murder, they might get him on manslaughter, but now, like, I don't know. Like, there's a good chance Rittenhouse, even though on paper seems to be clear-cut case of self-defense. He even had people like Destiny, who's a left-wing Twitch streamer who like made his bones debating like alt-right autists on the internet. Right. Even he came out and said like he's debating other lefties, saying like this is one of the most clear-cut cases of self-defense he's ever seen. Yeah. And I don't think like from any objective legal analysis you could make any other conclusion. But that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be acquitted.
So
from Chauvin.
Here's it's an excellent point about Rittenhouse. Mm-hmm. Here's where I fall on the verdict was a negative for liberty. Mm-hmm. Who was the prosecution in the Chauvin case?
The state.
Who was the defendant?
A citizen.
Correct.
A private citizen.
That's exactly right. And this is the framework that we have to view this decision. Mm-hmm. This is the bigger piece. Mm-hmm. And the downstream effects of that are twofold. And this is what I discussed kind of on Twitter, and this is where the ANCOP, all cops are bastards, lose me, because they make the same identity politics argument that they conceptually stand against because he's a cop.
Yeah.
And they treat this class as cops, which I have never been more anti-cop than I am now. Mm-hmm. But they treat this class as an identity group, in-group, out-group. They treat cops as out-group. Mm-hmm. Therefore, Fifth Amendment doesn't matter. 10th Amendment doesn't matter. Burden of evidence doesn't matter. Innocent until proven guilty doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. Now, that I disagree with. I'm also not an all... We're different. You're more radical on this, but I also don't claim to be an anarchist or a libertarian.
Right.
So it's a little different.
I also think it's important to note that it's not all cops. It's cops against black people. It's not...
What do you mean?
So There are plenty of people who are ACAB, right? In terms of like the cultural zeitgeist right now, turning against cops as a class. It's not all cops as a class in every interactions with police. It's cops as a class in interactions with black people.
No one cares about Daniel Shaver.
Yeah, no one cares about Duncan Lemp.
No one cares about Ashley Babbitt.
Yeah, no one cares about Ashley Babbitt. No one cares about, there's another guy that was a 32-year-old guy in Texas, gigantic white guy, who called the police because he said, I'm off my schizophrenia meds and I don't know what to do.
Right.
And they gave him the George Floyd treatment and kneeled on him until he died.
Got it.
But he's a white guy, so he's not going to be, these stories aren't propelled by corporate press. They don't.
Yeah.
It's very much that cops are racist. And that's why it's the police systems, the law enforcement, judiciary systems are themselves inherently racist. So it's the police's interactions with black people and non-white people that is the problem. It's not just all the cops. It's how they interact with black people.
So from
all the brutalization they do to non-black people is fine and isn't indicative of systemic racism.
Yeah. So let me just for podcast organization.
Yeah.
Let me stop you on that piece because that is what I want to talk about mostly on this episode.
Yeah.
But what I do want to get out of the way in maybe, I don't know, 10 minutes or 15 minutes is the Fifth Amendment, 10th Amendment, burden of proof piece for Chauvin. So we can kind of be done. Because I kind of want to be done with it.
Yeah.
Here's the scary thing about the Chauvin decision when you acknowledge that the prosecutor was the state and the defendant was a citizen. The result of the Chauvin case being murder 2 and murder 3 and manslaughter is this for me. First off, there's a postmodern. This doesn't apply to the Chauvin trial, but it highlights it. There's a postmodern problem we have here when we allow the state and we pathologize our psychology by rooting for the state when they get a conviction of unintentional murder. Now, the problem with that, the dogs, the problem with that is how can the word murder be preceded by the word unintentional? What this
seems a bit odd.
What this does is popularly legitimizes an ability for the state to manipulate language to fit a capital crime on something that shouldn't be a capital crime, right? We always talk about in the liberty movement how cops in the system create criminals out of non-criminal activities. And the reason I bring this up, and this is important, is because I'm seeing on Liberty Twitter folks argue for a system when you say things like, well, that seems a little strange that there was no intent and you still have a murder charge. And you see Liberty Twitter come back because they're blinded by their in-group, out-group hatred of cops. They make a prosecutorial argument that says, well, I don't have to prove intent to get murder. And it's like, that's stupid.
Yeah.
Why are we I don't want to create a scenario where I'm applauding that regardless of in-group, out-group. So that's piece number 1. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
You don't have to respond to it.
No, that makes sense.
So I get it and I understand it. Now, the second thing is, here's what's more particular to the Chauvin case is the underlying medical conditions. And here's where I can kind of be not talked out of this. I'd like to flesh out my position a little more on this. So there's a question. Did Derek Chauvin, and this is all about language, man, it's why postmodernism is so fucking hard. Did Derek Chauvin cause George Floyd's death? Now, this is really important. I do think the answer is yes. However, he caused the death because of the knee, etc. But he wouldn't have died without having underlying health conditions, fentanyl in his system, meth in his system. So what that means for liberty is now we have precedent, and it's dumb that we allow precedent to move caseload forward. That's stupid.
Yeah.
Just because it happened in this case now means we can justify the state doing it forward. But now precedent has been set that any assault or physical confrontation that results in death can now be escalated to murder based on the underlying medical conditions of the victim. And what that means for liberty is, again, I'll say it again, any physical confrontation that results in death purposefully or unintentionally or negligently is automatically now appropriate to assign a murder conviction. And that's a problem. And that's a problem because you can't have sovereign citizens who have the ability, who should have the ability to mediate their conflict, sometimes with violence. And the state can, again, if I push an anemic down in a confrontation, maybe I did commit assault, fine. But now, if that anemic bleeds out, I can now my assault charge is now a murder charge, and that's a problem. Does that how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. So
do you think I'm off base or on base?
I think you're on base. Maybe like with a lot of things we talk about, too far and too focused.
That could be. That's probably true.
I think
I don't think the metaphor is awful though.
It seems like I would want to know more about. I mean, I'm sure it's not really that important. Minnesota's statutes, because I feel like if you have various degrees of manslaughter and you have various degrees of murder, having murder 3 unintentional second degree murder.
Yes.
That doesn't make sense.
This is
so like I would want to know.
This is what I'm talking. This is like, exactly what I'm talking.
When and who, put those laws into effect in the state of Minnesota, and if they're put into place in other states, because then it completely nullifies the purpose of having different charges and different crimes, like you're saying.
Correct.
And I think what I mean by like too focused is
I don't even cheer this on.
Exactly. It's not even about your medical conditions. It's if the federal government wants to convict you, they will find a way to convict you.
Yeah, and you put it easier than I do.
And
yes.
Previously, it was when you threatened their interests, whether it was financial or political.
Yeah, sure.
Right?
Well, it is. Their interest is protecting.
Trust me, I'm getting it. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, protecting the narrative that police are racistly killing black people.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
It had to be very. The state, nothing bad is going to happen besides riots. And I don't think the state really cares about riots. In fact, riots and property damage only further benefit the elites who were able to buy up properties, gentrify neighborhoods, consolidate power, expand business markets,
buy insurance policies.
That it doesn't benefit the regular people. It only benefits people who can come in and buy up the land and the businesses for peanuts, right?
Right.
So, like, now the state, if they want to get you, they're going to get you. But now you don't have to worry about, okay, I'm doing something radical to piss off a government, like publish whistleblower secrets or do financial trading that causes chaos in the stock market, which causes the government to lose billions of dollars or whatever. Now are enough people on the internet and in the streets calling you a murderer?
Yeah. So this is where, first off, I think it's a pretty fucking good
public opinion.
I think it's a pretty fucking good observation that I made, and I love my anemia analogy.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think
this is the part where we want.
That the charges and the termingology. You're right. It has been completely nullified.
It's madness.
He's now become a sacrificial lamb. And he's going to be burned at the stake.
Yes.
And he will act as an avatar of all of the white liberal guilt that they feel when they clutch their purse and cross the street when a drug addicted homeless guy crosses their path. And this is another example of white liberals doing something, voting for things, and by that I mean district attorneys. The people who would appoint district attorneys like Keith Ellison.
Minnesota's deep blue.
Minnesota's deep blue.
Which is nuts.
Ilhan Omar's from Minnesota. So,
right. Well, she's from Somalia, but yes.
Yeah.
She represents. She somehow represents Minnesota. She also fucked her brother.
Yeah, she did do that. She also cheated. She also got a guy to cheat on his wife with her, who then her campaign later paid him like $400,000 in consulting fees, and now they're in a committed relationship and they live together.
Yeah, she's a you know what I'm gonna say, which is gonna be really fun. She's a fucking mongrel. Is what she is.
Yeah, I mean she is,
which is exciting.
So I lost my train of thought.
Well, so here's what so I'll do that with the Chauvin case. I fleshed this out. Here's where I'm really fucking good at this part. I should have been I would have fuck Eric Nelson. I would have got this guy off.
Nelson, dude,
he did a good
job. By just the basics.
He asked for there was no jury sequestration. You know so this is what I want to get into now, and this is where you're better at it than I am. And what I want to posit to you now is so there was a pretty good conversation between some Liberty Twitter folks who I like. Reed Coverdale, who's pretty good.
Yeah, he was on Dave Smith's show.
Yes, yeah.
I watched a little bit. I didn't watch the whole thing.
I like him. He's pretty good. He's. I just think I have I'm. We'd be so much better. It's crazy. It's just we just. And this other guy, Magnus something. Right?
Yeah, the Boogaloo Boy.
Correct.
The bisexual Native American Boogaloo Boy who was raised on a hippie commune. Yeah,
pretty
he's
good.
Magnus Carlson.
I think that
they chose their own names on the commune. I watched his interview with Jimmy Dore. He did like a half-hour interview with Jimmy Dore. And Jimmy Dore's like, so can you tell me a little bit about how you're this right-wing militia death squad that wants to kill me? And he's like, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I'll do that.
So they're pretty good. I still think we're more entertaining. I'm way more entertaining. So are you. I really believe
we just got to put in the legwork.
We're way fucking more entertaining. I promise you. I swear to God.
I think so.
So anyway, but he made a really good point that I would have
better looking too.
That's true. And I think my thing's gonna be wearing.
Get way more pussy.
I'm gonna wear my sunglasses whenever I go on, just because Scott Zolak does that, who I like.
I'm actually gonna hire a little person to go wear an earpiece.
Right. Actually, just talk through them.
Yeah, just speak through them the whole. And they're gonna be like, "Well, you said you're like 6 feet tall." I identify as 6 feet tall.
That's rude.
Actually.
So anyway, what I want to posit to you because you're way more. I'm better at plenty than you are.
Yeah.
But you're better at. So he posited, I think correctly, and I tweeted about it, and he retweeted me, which basically
that's pretty sweet.
Which basically makes us AIDS buddies.
Yeah. He's your boyfriend now.
This was absolutely like an op, like completely. Meaning
the show trial, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a show. It was a show trial.
Completely and entirely.
It's a show trial.
A media fabrication that absolutely had, I don't know who it is, CIA, FBI, whatever. There was okay. And the evidence, which is pretty interesting, is, and we talk about this about racial caring, right?
Yeah.
Like we don't care about this in-group. We do care about we don't care about this out group. We do care about this in group.
Yeah.
And the argument is it's really telling that Chauvin and Floyd, which is so gray and so muddy and truly it's dividing Liberty Twitter, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
It's so perfectly divisive. When you have Breonna Taylor and Philando Castile and Daniel Shaver and Freddie Gray, you have these very clear-cut sort of unifying cases that could maybe result in some type of reform around qualified immunity, etc. But you pick the most gray, the most weird, the most divisive cases to create St. Floyd. I mean, that is not that we go back. We've gone back to our previous couple of episodes. There's probably not a singular person with a mustache twirling it, but it really fucking feels like there is.
So I think of it like.
Do you know what I mean?
I do. I think of it like.
And you're better at this.
I think of it. I think of it like a pyramid, right? And at the bottom level, the widest part, you have most
the carbs.
What you have rent-seeking blue check marks, right?
Sure.
So these are people who act as stenographers for the state, and they just repeat what they're told by CIA Mockingbird intelligence agency plants. Yeah. And that's not a conspiracy. You can go on to
among the blue checkmark.
People.
Where are they? I guess
they work for CNN, MSNBC,
I understand
Fox News.
But where are
the rent-seeking blue check marks?
No. Where's the distribution chain practically? I'm actually asking this. This is
not.
No,
I know.
Where are the distribution channels from the deep state? Are they bot accounts on Twitter? Are they? What are they?
So you
understand?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
So Brennan, the head of the CIA under Obama, works for MSNBC. Mm-hmm. If you go to MSNBC or CNN and you look at their roster, right, and you go through each person, you will be surprised at the amount of them that are former State Department and former intelligence agency officials.
So you think we even skipped over Twitter and social media? We're right at
They're already there.
They're already there.
They're already there. And then you have the rent-seeking blue check marks. They work for New York Times, Washington Post, Huffington Post, BuzzFeeds, Teen Vogue, Vox, Salon, The Independents,
Vox,
the Young Turks, and these people repeat. They repeat not just like postmodern wokeism, not just all the culture war stuff, but also like neocon. Foreign intervention like propaganda.
Certainly.
And they don't look at, when they're given press releases and statements from the Biden administration, from the State Department, from the CIA and the NSA and the DIA and the different intelligence agencies, they do not process these stories critically. They repeat them, and they repeat them with great vigor, and they're very sure about it. Vigor. They don't really do any journalism. They don't cross-reference things. They don't look things up. And I saw one today that got published when it was a Supreme Court decision. I don't remember what it was. It wasn't a major issue, but it was something like, you're like, oh, that makes sense in the culture war. And Kavanaugh wrote the dissenting opinion. Got it. Right? And the journalist writes, the justice who wrote the dissenting opinion, Brett Kavanaugh, despite having his own past of misdeeds in college, goes to talk about it. Something that was never proven, that was completely disproven. That there's credible evidence to show that the people who accused him were bad actors, right? And they repeat it as if it's not only do they repeat state propaganda, they add their own things that fit in with their agenda.
And it's also not germane.
Yeah, and so
it has
so
nothing
you have
to do,
so at the top of the just to go back, I know we're trying to stay a little structured.
Sure.
At the top of the pyramid, you have the controllers, the elites, right? The billionaire class, your Rockefellers, your Vanderbilts, and then the people who actually run the country who you've never heard of, like the woman whose family owns the company that makes all the money, all the paper our money's printed on, right?
Right. Raytheon,
Boeing. Defense contract, pharmaceuticals, resources, oil and gas, transportation, import, export, all the big businesses going back to like the Kennedy and Bush days, right? The Kennedys, the Bushes, the Clintons.
Right, they themselves.
Yeah, Sheldon Adelson.
Right.
All of the elites across the country, the people who... that donate to political... Mike Bloomberg. The millionaires and billionaires that run political campaigns, that run media giants, that run the world. As silly as that sounds.
No, I
below them, you have the people that they hold influence over. The people who work in government, people who work in the State Department, people who work in media, people in Hollywood.
Right.
And it all sort of rolls downhill. And I think, honestly, by the time it gets to the people on the bottom, the blue check rent seekers, they're just thrilled to have a $70,000 a year job writing for some newspaper that they can afford to live in Brooklyn and hang out with all their friends.
Yeah, and there's a pathologizing,
and it lines up with a lot of their ideologies.
Well, this is what I was going to say.
So if it's what you want to hear, why are you going to, like, in their perspective, if it's what you want to hear, and you're not really a journalist anyway, and people are paying you like you are.
This is
like I've gotten into plenty of jobs where I interviewed great, and then I got in and got the job, and clearly didn't know what the fuck was going on.
Oh sure.
And like you're not gonna just
that's just a job.
You're not just gonna admit it to your employer. You know what I mean?
Right.
And if your boss gives you a report and he's like, hey, I want to see if this is good, and you just tell him it's good.
Right.
I mean.
Well,
I know, that's a really simple analogy. My point is, my point is, it all comes down like through the pyramid, right?
Sure.
And the people at the bottom who are like the people who were tweeting the other day when the cop in Columbus shot the girl with the knife.
Yes, knife fights are normal.
Knife fights are normal for
15-year-olds. This is a new one. This is. Why don't you
like,
just let them fight
really,
it out?
Do people really believe that, dude? Or do you just know that if you're on the right side, like you can fail upwards in leftism. Like, you can get things wrong.
Yeah, that's
Russiagate.
Right. You can feel
Russia bounties.
Yeah.
BLM riots. You can get things wrong, and if you do it with grace, in air quotes, you can fail upwards. So I don't really know where I was going with it.
Well, so my point is the and I guess there's probably so the segue.
Well, you were asking me specifically something, and I got totally off topic.
Sure, I was asking you that or how you would articulate. So okay, I was asking you to articulate my instinct that the Floyd case in particular was the one that was driven by the media and corporate narrative.
Oh, yes.
And not Breonna Taylor and not Philando Castile and not Daniel Shaver and not Freddie Gray.
Yeah. So I got distracted with my weird fucking pyramid thing. Sorry, everybody.
Yeah, fucking.
Yeah, sorry.
Come back to earth.
Sorry. Yes. They don't want a unified discussion about the excessive powers of the enforcement wing of the state.
Yes.
They don't want people of all colors and all genders and all races and all religions and all identities to come together and say, why are we letting the police kick in our doors at 2 a.m. and disarm us? Like, why are we letting them crack down on the First Amendment?
Correct.
Now, it's one thing if people are burning down buildings and starting riots, but like, yeah, you can see, strangely enough, some places we always get trolled by, but Europe is doing a lot. I've seen more regular police brutality coming out of Denmark and Germany and the UK and France.
They're doing here. They are doing the COVID Stasi that we are afraid of.
Yeah, yes.
And we're right to be afraid of it.
But
but they're doing it
to bring things to.
There's that Belgium. Yeah. There's that Belgium. I believe it's Belgium.
Belgium's going off.
Where there's like more than that, whatever, 20 cops on horses, riding through and beating basically a park full of. It's an anti-mask protest, and the cops are coming in and beating people up and running them down with horses, and it's like that is something we can all unify. Yeah. The fact that we can't, and this is why COVID is so brilliant, You've created an in-group now with the COVID blue and on COVID folks who believe in any enforcement mechanism that aligns with a positive affirmation that COVID is a death sentence.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to what you said. What you said last episode is that they're forcing people to participate in the lie.
They're forcing people to participate in the lie.
And
so now they're
not. They've not even forced. They've convinced people to participate in the lie.
Correct.
They've convinced them to participate in the lie to the point where they believe that people are ratting out their neighbors for having too many people in their homes.
So this is why Floyd is so. I'm sorry. This is where Floyd is so important.
No. I got off topic
because this is why Floyd is so important. Because if we diverted, I don't know, 10% of the vitriol from the blue checkmark left toward the enforcement wing of the federal government in the context of COVID lockdowns that we do with this fake psyop with George Floyd, then we would be unified and COVID would be over and things would be back.
Where I was going,
but now we have these people, the same people who charge police brutality will not charge police brutality if they lock a church and throw somebody in a jail.
So that's where I was going.
And it's like, what? That's fucked. That's why Floyd should scream at you if you're in Liberty Twitter, and scream at you if you're Michael Malice, and scream at you if you're an anarcho-capitalist, to not take the bait that says all cops are bastards. He got what he did. You felt, he got what he deserved because he caught. Some Michael Fegert, sports. Love you, mean it. You're fucking wrong on this. You're totally getting had. All of your instincts are being leveraged against you by this fucking honeypot of a case. That's what's happening. And people I really like, smart people. Dave Smith, smart guy. I like him a lot. Articulates it very well. He falls exactly into the trap.
I saw
completely and totally into the trap.
Yep, I saw.
Totally into the trap.
I saw.
And it's like, how do you know? And again, we're talking about this.
So
I'm articulating
it is worth saying. It is worth saying that
do you understand this point?
I totally understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I love Dave, and I love.
So do I.
And I know you do. And I love Michael Malice, and I love a lot of the more renegade, anarchist, libertarian guys that are trying to sort of take over that space.
Sure.
However, even though I like them, this is something that I would think of people that I don't like, that is in their position, that they seem to be hitting a real stride right now, right? If you look at their numbers compared to, like, say, even 2 years ago, and especially if you say 4 years ago, right?
Yeah, they're
I need to wonder if maybe the more inflammatory,
I love you.
The more inflammatory things like that.
Michael Malice is a honeypot.
No.
Do it. Michael Malice is a Fed.
No, he isn't. He's not a Fed boy. No. What I'm saying is they are marketing themselves.
Yeah.
And they have built a platform on a number of their ideals and principles.
Yeah.
And one of their principles is ACAB.
I'm going to say Michael Malice is a Fed on Twitter.
Disagree.
I fucking love it.
Disagree.
There is no one.
You should tag him and do that.
There is no one more subversive.
He would love it.
Yeah,
He would absolutely love it. So where I was going with my weird ancient aliens period analogy. Period. Yeah, they're all bleeding out of their transsexual pussies. Where I was going with that is that the people at the top understand the direction they're shifting things.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And they, through their intermediaries in business, in entertainment, in media, and through the third level of their blue check rent seekers, right? They reinforce the directions they're pushing things. And I don't think that one of the reasons I was certainly, I don't know, surprised to see rule of law subverted by public opinion, but I wasn't entirely shocked because these things have been happening for a while.
Yeah.
And one of the ways that they're able to stop people when Floyd happens, you always see influencers and public figures coming out and saying, no, we need to unite. Like, this is meant to divide us and keep everyone separated. We need to stand up and get together against the man.
You don't see a lot of that anymore.
Well, you don't. Well, you do. You see it from, if we're talking about right now, Libertarian ANCAP Twitter.
Yeah.
You do see that.
That's true. You're right. That's
the majority of the Libertarian Party, and from a lot of people on the left, even though I don't think they mean it. They want hegemony and they want you to fall in line.
Right.
People on the right, I think people on the right do mean it, but they don't have the balls to fight for it.
People on the right do mean it.
And great. Do something about it.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Right?
So real quick, my only argument to that is, and it's fine. I have a thick skin. It's funny and whatever. It's interesting when I hear the Magnuses and the Reed Coverdales and the Daves of the world, and the Michael Malices of the world, again, who I like, say it's all Republicans' fault for not standing up.
So wait, and before, I'm going to lose this.
It's like
I agree.
Where the fuck are you?
Yeah.
Like what is that? You know. Sorry.
So when people are calling for this unity, people say, okay, let's unite. And they're like, all right, we all need to go against the cops because they do all these bad things. And the left would say, yes, you're right. They're racist. They they brutalize people. They violate people's rights. They're a system of brutal white supremacy. And
they only say white supremacy.
Yeah.
They don't care about rights.
I know. Oh, I know. And then the libertarians, the ANCAPs, the people on the right will say, we agree. We think it's terrible that the police are victimizing people. Right? The smart ones do. The dumb ones, and I don't mean smart as in they know the statistics, because if you know the statistics, it's really easy to dig your heels in the sand and say, actually, no, they don't brutalize your people more than anybody else, right? I know, and I recognize that. Yeah. The statistical
argument is on the bench.
And I agree with that. I agree with that.
Yeah.
But if we're talking about in the abstract, right?
Yep.
Starting a coalition, a rainbow coalition of Americans on different sides to stand up against state violence, aka the police.
Yeah.
I think it's important we use that perspective. And so the people on the right will say, you know what? I might not totally agree with you that they're victimizing you, but I definitely think they have too much power, and that if they are disproportionately affecting different neighborhoods, we should address that.
Yes.
But also, they've been enforcing COVID lockdowns and destroying businesses. They've also been disarming people all over the country. You're going to get a large percentage of the left who are going to check out immediately. They're going to check out immediately. And they're not going to be interested in compromising and uniting with you against the police because you're not on their team.
They only care about the racial case.
Even though it's in their interest to unite with people against the police and remove their power, as soon as you tell them, also, I'm not just mad about the racism, I'm also mad about the disarmament and the lockdowns. And this is why we can get together on these things and we can agree to take them down. And immediately they're gonna flip the fuck out. They're gonna flip the fuck out. If they even listen to you.
Correct.
If they even listen to you.
They'll read because so they will not listen to you.
And I don't think it's a given they'll listen to you anyway. If people... If you are associated with libertarianism, right-wing, conservative, Trump, MAGA, even the blandest of bland Ben Shapiro takes...
Right, yes.
It's not going to matter because like you're already their enemy. And the only way they'll know you're not their enemy is if you join their side and become anti-racist.
You know what's really...
Right?
This is
so this is done... You know, by the like we just discussed, the people who the foot soldiers doing this, the kids who are coming out of the university brainwashed, the 26-year-olds that work for the New York Times, right? Like I don't think, like we said, I don't think they're mustachio twirling villains, right? But these issues,
can't be
these internal divides on COVID lockdown, on gun control, pick your issue, are intentionally stoked to prevent this. Unification from happening.
Absolutely.
So I agree with you that Chauvin was that. My only disagreement is he wasn't the one. He was one in several consecutive pieces of a divide and conquer strategy.
Well, Michael Brown.
That has been going on for a long time. And if we want to trace where it really got amped up was Occupy Wall Street and Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown.
Well, and this is what's
all of this stuff happened after that,
and it's because it's so interesting that
because sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but like, what would be next? Say people do unify and they march to the police, like Chicago, right? So Chicago, Jussie Smollett was complete bullshit, right? Mm-hmm. Here's the thing: a couple of years before that, Chicago got caught having illegal black site prisons. Where they took people with no due process, habeas corpus, or human rights treatment, locked them in cells and beat them and tortured them until they complied with investigations. So this Chicago PD doesn't exactly have like a stellar history of following up. And these prisons were almost entirely filled with black people. I mean, almost all the people at the time being arrested were black people, but you know, they were all black people in these prisons. So it wasn't out of the spectrum of possibility to think that like, maybe the Chicago PD like aren't telling us the full story, even though this guy's a complete fucking idiot, right?
Yeah.
Unrelated, CPD also announced that if you join the force and stay for 18 months, they're going to pay you $80K a year.
Yeah, I mean,
because they can't find anyone.
No one in their right mind.
So let's say everyone in Chicago unifies. Al Sharpton and Maxine Waters shut the fuck up and stay the fuck home. And people unite and they march to City Hall and they demand people resign and they demand Lori Lightfoot resign, which they would never do because she's a wonderful black gay soldier for the left.
Beetlejuice.
Beetlejuice. And they actually like have some accountability. Where do they go next?
So this is my abs. And
I think the two things you can hold up, right? Government, corporations.
This is the...
What stops them from going to the Amazon headquarters in the city?
Yep.
And saying, you know what, I'm sick of peeing in bottles. And I'm sick of getting paid, $14.50 an hour to work in Bezos' slave factory. Now, the free market economics and right to work, that's another conversation.
And they voted not to unionize.
I think that's the next way people would go, right? I think that the next logical conclusion after you take down the corrupt. Let's think of a utopian future, right?
Yes.
You take down the corrupt institution of policing and law and order, and let's say it doesn't descend into roving anarchical mayhem, and you do have your fucking kumbaya Chaz society.
Might makes right.
You're right. Where do you go next? You go to the corporations. Is it if you adopt that perspective, is it surprising at all that the corporations have become the newest like avatars of the woke agenda?
Oh no! This is the crocodile being eaten by the crocodile last.
Yeah.
And seeing the writing on the wall.
Yeah.
And doing the if we can't beat them, join them game.
Yeah.
That's the game that's being played.
Like if they can get involved in all these political things, they can get involved in the Georgia voting rights bill.
Bullshit.
Total bullshit. If they can get involved in all of the police violence.
And again, this is where Liberty Twitter gets fucking bamboozled, you dummies.
Yeah, they suck corporate cock.
They
dude,
do,
man. Talked about it last. No, I'm not a libertarian anymore, man. They suck corporate cock.
You're such a dummy.
They're so desperate for followers that they're doing the woke stuff, and they don't understand that. Like, you're the Liberty Party. You're supposed to be anti-lockdown, and you're not doing anti-lockdown stuff, and you're doing woke stuff.
Correct. And you're there's plenty to fight the right about, obviously.
like you said. So what are the ANCAPs doing? What are the libertarians doing? Like we talked about last time, the libertarians think that if you just have your free market, Bill of Rights society, all problems will go away.
Right.
And people will stop trying to subvert and destroy society.
That's right. Yeah, right.
And the reason why they think that is because I think a lot of the smart ones understand that will never happen, but it won't matter because they'll have fully automatic weapons, private security, and McNukes.
Right.
So who cares?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that's an awfully stupid way
It seems kind of fatalistic and bleak.
Well, and it also sucks.
It doesn't seem like if you wanted the largest percent of liberty for the largest percent of people, that would be your strategy.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
That's the best way to put that's a really intelligent take.
Yeah.
It seems because what you're saying is I need to be fucking Jackie Chan just to exist.
Yeah.
And it's like,
I
there's
think
no conceptual problem with outsourcing some of your safety. Like, to say, like, we create these grand, and you do the same virtue signaling bullshit that the woke do when you say an ounce of, security at the expense of freedom is traitorous. It's like, shut the listen, I really, really get it.
Yeah.
But outsourcing, not having to fucking strap up every second of the day because you're unwilling to outsource any bit of your societal security is fucking retarded.
Well,
that is an autist's world.
You're right, but in order for that to work...
And I'm a Second Amendment guy who says there's no such thing as an illegal gun. There's no such thing as there really is no such thing as a ghost gun.
Castle Doctrine, stand your ground.
Yeah. You know what? We should disarm police and arm... You know what we should... Here's my new radical thing, is we should have UK-style police.
Yeah,
that's what we should have.
I agree.
All of the guns should move from the police and to the citizenry.
So I think that it's...
How's that? So I'm not some fucking...
If you want to reject the anarcho-libertarian masturbatory fantasy...
It's just so...
It's incumbent on the current power structure, i.e. government, to fulfill their promise for security and safety... and liberty, which they're not doing.
That's right. Yeah. So fair enough.
So, like, in a vacuum, but right now, they're not fulfilling their fundamental obligation to your security and your liberty.
And where I agree, and I'm fine with, is yes. Fuck Mitch McConnell. Absolutely. Yes. Fuck,
And I think in terms of what they're doing, is they're with being a little... fanciful, is they're waking up a lot of people to...
Yes, they are.
They're red-pilling people. Yeah.
They're way more red-pilling.
They're red-pilling tons of people.
And this is what I do, and you know this. I can't say anything nice about anybody.
No.
And the only time I talk about anything is fucking tearing it apart. Yeah. And I like these people. Again, I like these people. I like all of them. And it's absolutely right. They've completely... I shouldn't say that. Because I was never totally blue-pilled. Yeah. But it's like... Anarchy and liberty... is not where I was a year and a half ago, and now I am way further that direction.
I think it's also important for us to recognize that we are sort of in that criticism embracing meme anarchy, where everyone thinks it's an unstructured,
you're right. You are
Mad Max style anarchy. Where
you are correct.
If there was like true anarchy, other like General Electric wouldn't just disappear. Right.
Well, but I'm stupid and conscientious. Right. So when people say things, hospitality
industries,
even though I understand sarcasm,
wouldn't disappear. Food manufacturers wouldn't disappear.
Yes.
They like we've discussed before, they would probably pay less money hiring private security than they pay in tax.
But that's not libertarian. My argument is that's not libertarian ANCAP Twitter. That's actual conservatism. That what you're describing is conservatism.
No, I mean we have.
It is. That's Edmund Burke, Peter Schiff, Adam Smith. All of the Austrian School of Economics are conservatives. Period.
Yeah.
You cannot argue that. So when I hear people rally against, and a lot of problems now is that from a postmodern perspective, conservatism has changed. So you're right, and I get it. But also, it's like, well, conservatives don't care, and maybe this.
Well, small government isn't no government. Anarchism is no government. Small government is not no government. Federalism is not anarchy.
That's correct. Yes, and that's me. So it's why I very clearly say
I would take federalism over anarchy right now. The reason why I'm so hard on the anarchy is that, like, I don't currently see a navigatable route to limited federal power, states' rights, Bill of Rights, on like followed government. Yeah. I don't see that happening. I don't see the Constitution as a sufficient bulwark for my liberty.
Yeah, it hasn't been. It can't.
I don't see current like demographic trends going in that direction. Nope. I don't see.
It's another thing that libertarians get so wrong.
I don't see current cultural demographics in terms of like entertainment and values,
TikTok
and virtues.
Yep.
I don't see it going in that direction. So I don't think there's going to be enough impetus and enough support to create the conservative wet dream federalist system where we can have our cake and eat it too.
So, okay. So
if we could have our cake and eat it too, that'd be great.
So here's an interesting question.
Yeah.
It's a good question, I think, that you bring up. What's more realistic? What are the which steps to achieve this end that I'm about to describe? Mm-hmm. Which steps are more realistic? The steps we would need to take to get to true federalism, state rights, a republic, mm-hmm. versus anarchy.
It's difficult because I think the only way you would have...
Do you understand that question?
Yeah, the only way I think you would have enough mechanical power, meaning the ability to actually get shit done, in order to stop the shifting of the zeitgeist and stop the globalization of powers and stop the expansion of the federal government and stop the hegemony of the uniparty. I won't even call it the Democrats because it's turning into the uniparty.
Correct.
Would be some kind of groundswell of support focused around a singular figure.
Okay.
Or several singular figures.
That's interesting.
Right? We would need a state, you could say revolutionary, but I would like to say statesman. You would need, or several statesmen, that are able to rally enough of the disenfranchised and the 74 million people who voted for Trump and the other
85 million. Yeah, who's counting?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
That could rally them and could also rally a lot of people who didn't vote and could also rally a lot of people who voted for Biden have a lot of remorse right now. And figure, this mythical statesman, I'm not talking about a MAGA right-wing person. It could be Democrat, it could be Republican. If they have the right set of values, it's able to unify people.
Is this a less faggy Weinstein unity 2020?
No. This is a 60%.
Do you know what that is?
I do.
Yeah,
I do.
Yeah.
No,
this is Brett Weinstein.
This is a 40 to 60% of America have had it up to here and they're not going to take it anymore.
Right.
And one person or a few different people are able to tap in and grow that sentiment into a national movement. Now that creates...
It was kind of Trump. They didn't do it right, but
they got all the power and then they did nothing.
Yeah, you're right.
They got all the power.
But you know what I mean. But
kind of.
Actually, so that kind of kills me because that says the mechanisms are similar.
No, because he didn't he was never accepted by the establishment structures, and I don't think this new messianic figure that I'm.
But they're not going to be accepted either.
No, they aren't.
So what's the difference?
Yeah, they have balls. They don't. They don't go down like a bitch on January 6th.
Right.
They don't.
You mean they actually take it
They
back.
don't. Yeah, they don't give up on all their promises that they claimed they were going to do. They don't fucking become Israel's butt buddy while people are starving in the streets. They don't abandon the American people. Now I can argue till the cows come home that Donald Trump was better than Hillary Clinton.
Sure.
And that.
And that's not a question.
No, it's not. I can do that all day long. And that's not what I'm saying. That when you were given. Trump was given an opportunity.
You're right.
To make good on his promises.
This is like Peter Schiff.
And really change something.
Yes.
And he didn't do it because he's a rich billionaire real estate playboy who wants to go home and play golf and drink Diet Cokes.
Yeah.
Right? So if we could have someone who's not that,
yes,
then maybe when they capture this national movement, they could do something.
They actually do it.
Now, I think that in that scenario, you create a very centralized power structure around this one or several figures, right? Which after the quote-unquote revolution is over, how do you go back to a federalist limited government? It's a literal miracle scenario where you need the perfect thing to happen.
You need
at the perfect
racist,
time.
slave-owning, wooden teeth, George Washington, who's the most brilliant human being who's ever fucking lived. Because that's what he did.
Yeah.
What you're describing is George fucking Washington.
It's a once
did he give a shit about black people, and did he hunt down missing slaves? Yes.
I imagine that the people...
Who gives a fuck
I imagine
in this
that
context?
the amount of people who were told, we want you to be the king, and they said no, is you can probably count on like one or two hands. I don't think there's a lot of people.
Washington.
Yeah, I know.
The second person was Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah.
The third person was John Adams.
Yeah. So we would need that. We need and
But the founding fathers were racist.
Yeah.
Like, shut the fuck up.
They had an opportunity at absolute power and they turned it down.
I mean, it is.
They were willing. And here's the thing.
And this is why when people say oh, it's founded on bullshit and the conservatives are dumb and they suck the dick of liberty, it's like, shut the fuck up, dude. They're doing exactly what you're describing.
This is why it's being made so difficult. Jesus. And this is why people are being doxxed and threatened and harassed. They're having their lives and their careers and their family lives ruined. They want to dissuade people from standing up for these kinds of beliefs.
Absolutely.
Maybe not specifically what I'm describing, but like anti-establishment hegemony, anti-establishment, pro-nationalist. I think what I'm describing is like my masturbatory fantasy of a national populist revolution, just so the libertarians don't think I'm just hating on you. This is my own fucking jerk off on what I wish would happen. I think that would be great, and we could all wear berets and sunglasses and like smoke Eastern European cigarettes.
Sure, right.
Sweet, dude.
Oh my god, cigarette would be awesome.
How cool would that be?
I think I have cigarettes.
I could have it done. Cool.
It would be wild to smoke a cigarette in here, but I'm a fucking anarchist.
But that's why they want to destroy anybody, because the chance that you have someone who's willing to literally be attacked and almost murdered and go to prison for what they believe in to try to like start or continue a movement, they're trying to make it so difficult.
That's right.
Because the harder that is to do, the less likely this person, whoever it is going to say, you know what, fuck it, I've had enough. I'm going down to City Hall and I'm getting 20 of my friends.
Well, and they need to bring weapons.
Yeah.
They need to be technically proficient.
Yeah. This is the fucking problem. Yeah. This is why I'm less critical of the anarchist people and more critical of the right wing, because when the right wing do that, they're little bitches with the police. The police show up and they tell them to move, and thank you very much, officer. Yeah, sure, officer. Anything. Say fuck you.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. No. Like, what are they? What? Like 30 dudes with better gear than the cops.
What are they? One of these. Do you want to split this?
Yeah. I'll split it with you.
It's actually perfect. Just one.
And then sure. And then the left, when they show up with their guns and their Molotov cocktails and their knives and hatchets and clubs, and the police tell them to leave, they don't leave.
Right.
And they fight. And sometimes they get beat up and arrested. And sometimes they go to jail.
Right.
And they do it week after week after week after week, while right-wing people say, yes, sir, Mr. Officer, sir.
Yeah, and this conscientious bullshit.
And they move 100 yards down the street, and then half of them don't show up because they have to go to work or they have to go to their kids' dance recital. And that's a valid argument. And it's one thing to make fun of the left for their moral failings or their fulfillment, their lack of fulfillment. But that lack of fulfillment and moral failing is very effective for them, if only because the DAs and the federal government are just letting them off.
I mean, I don't know if it was Maxine Waters or some whatever. It doesn't matter who said it. The overwhelming narrative was the rioting worked.
And the right wing
completely worked.
The right wing people will hear what I said.
Not to interrupt you. If we don't have the summer of love, there is no Chauvin verdict.
Joe Biden doesn't get elected. There's no summer of love. There would have been such an overwhelming support for Trump if it hadn't been for COVID and George Floyd, that they wouldn't have been able to cheat their way out of it.
No shot. No chance whatsoever.
It would have been like Hillary all over again. Yep. And they just wouldn't have been able to overcome it.
Yeah, right.
They just wouldn't. They tried to do it in 2016,
They did. I was going to say.
And you know what? The right wing did it to Barrio on his re-election. And they couldn't beat him either because he was so fucking popular. Largely because of the manufactured consents that the press had provided him for 4 years. Right? So the right wing people will say, oh, but no, like, the George Soros funded DAs, which is a real thing. All over the country. Well, the George Soros DAs, they just let everyone out of prison. None of the Antifa people go to jail. They get let out. And when they deputized the feds over on the West Coast and the feds locked up a bunch of people and we all breathed a sigh of relief And we all said, well, at least that was brilliant. They deputized the state troopers. They don't have to bring in any feds. And that's a 3D chess by Donald Trump and his people. Wrong. Right. Joe Biden just cleared all their charges, bro. Yeah. So 90%, some people are saying up to 95, 100% of all the rioting and mayhem charges from I don't, whatever city they deputized the state. I can't remember if it was Portland or Seattle. They're both fucking shitholes.
It doesn't matter.
All their charges just got cleared. Right. So until the right-wing people are willing, because you're going to go to jail.
Yeah,
you're going to get charged.
Right.
And you're not going to get your charges dropped.
Correct. You're January 6th. You're being witch hunted.
And you will get beaten by the guards.
Absolutely.
And until...
You'll get shot in the fucking head like Ashley Babbitt.
And until enough people are willing to say, no, I will go to jail and I will die for what I believe in. It's not going to stop. Because these people on the left, I don't care if it's because they've been on SSRI since they're 10 and they have psychosis. I don't care if it's because they were molested. I don't care if it's because they're schizophrenic. Yes. I don't care if it's because they're on heroin. I don't care if they're convicted pedophiles with felony records. They are willing to go to jail and they are willing to die for their beliefs. Look at Michael Reinhold in Portland, the guy who shot a Trump supporter in the face.
In the fucking head.
And then when the feds came for him, he pulled a gun and went down shooting. Absolutely. Now, I think that guy's a piece of shit. I think he deserved to get arrested and charged with murder. But when the police in the state came to say, you're coming with us, he said, fuck you, kill me.
He sure did.
And that is a kind of ideology that will win. And as long as the right-wing people want to hide behind their fucking $100K a year, buying a new truck every 3 years, I have fucking obligations and I have a family. Family's important. A material wealth, if it gives you happiness, great. It's not going to save you.
Yeah.
And if you won't fight for it, they're going to come for you eventually.
And this is what
whether it's the state or the mob, they are going to come for you eventually. So you might as well not be a bitch about it.
So this is, I mean, John Brown is a hero of mine, obviously. You know John Brown.
John Brown,
the abolitionist.
Army,
the abolitionist who who was motivated. Here's the real red pill. All you atheists out there. It was all driven by Christianity.
Yeah, big time.
Every piece of abolition only exists because of Christianity. That's it. So, and here's what's interesting is you can make the bitch whataboutism Ben Shapiro argument, which is, could you imagine if we actually had the summer of love with a right-wing instinct and the media would crucify you and it would be blah, blah, blah. It's the same argument as the New York Times isn't going to write glowing reviews of you anyway.
Right. Yep.
But it's obviously the next step further, and that's what we have to not give a. You're correct that conservatives can't be satisfied with winning the hypocritical argument.
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't fucking matter.
I mean, they won that argument for decades. They won that argument for decades. So the leftists changed the rules.
Yes, that's right.
They won that game for 100+ years.
Right.
And then the left changed the rules.
Yes. And they did it with the and this is where it all filters back. And it's where it's a self-fulfilling prophecy is the media created it, they harbored it, they incubated it, they allowed the narrative to be disseminated through it. It's why we're wearing masks. It's the same thing. It's why we're walking around, not you or I, and this is always there's nothing, this is where I really get it. And I don't even know if libertarians, because I see libertarians not do this either, is they now again, smaller scale, they bitch about, I have not been locked down ever.
I haven't either.
I was on a cruise ship on March 9th, 2020. That's where I will
say that for the first,
and I stopped wearing a mask, and I haven't worn a mask, and I was at the gym today, and I was at wrestling, and the good news is, and I understand it, but the Stasi hasn't come to get me.
No.
The infrastructure hasn't kicked my door down.
Nope.
So I hear all of these liberty folks saying, "Wah, isn't it so shitty that we're being locked down?" And I get that, and I sympathize with it, and I empathize with it, and it's correct. But my response, which seems to fall on deaf ears, is just stop complying.
Yeah, just don't do it.
And no one does.
Yeah.
They just bitch about it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I hear you, and you're right. I'm not killing cops in the street and being the not that I want to, and I don't want to kill cops. I'm not pushing the envelope violently, which I do think if the time came, I would. I'll put it to you this way. I've only been kind of harassed, quote unquote, once, and it was in the gym, and it was some fucking probably like boomer con guy, who was like, put your mask on, and I was as aggressive as I could possibly be, and I'm not some fucking Rosa Parks, but I was as aggressive as I could possibly be, and I said, "You're not going to tell me to put a mask on," and he said, "I'm going to go get the manager or whatever," and I said, "Fine." And the manager came over, and I said, okay, and I put my mask on, and she turned around, and I pulled it back down, and she saw me, and she didn't say a damn thing.
What is she gonna do?
She doesn't give a shit anyway, and I'm a customer, and she did what her job is. It would have been way better if like they just don't give a shit at all. But she did as well as you could have possibly done, which is I appeased this fucking pussy bitch guy who's a customer, but I also didn't hassle and bother me who's a customer. So time being, I'll take my small victories. The point is, you can, as long as we have a lot of people who say that they're okay with confrontation, and they're not, and they're just not.
No.
And they don't even allow, and here's the thing, sort of the libertarian ANCAP movement goes right to, well, we need to overthrow the government and kill cops. And it's like, we don't need to do that now. We may need to do that, and it may be there. All you need to do now is just stop wearing the mask. All you need to do now is just send your kid to school without a mask and make them put it on. All you need to do is, if you're in a company, don't tell them when they ask you if you're vaccinated. Don't, like, these small acts of civil disobedience seem to be, and we're, again, I'm not going to dox myself or whatever. We're in Massachusetts. We're in the fucking epicenter of the bullshit. Now, maybe not. We're the second tier. New York and California are number one. But we're right there.
Wherever in New York and California are, we're generally a few steps behind.
But we're right there.
Yeah.
And my point is, like, and what I believe here is we have a postmodern internet that says they can cosplay as liberty lovers here, but they're still, and they're bitching about being locked down and how unfair it is, but they're not actually going out and disobeying. I don't think, it doesn't seem that way.
I think you have to do both.
And it's you're correct. Yeah. Well, this is my point. They're not coming up. And you don't have to say, well, it's pointless unless I kill a cop. It's like, that's not true.
I think that's like, I don't think a lot of the real, the dirtbag left anarchists, the anarcho-communists are definitely on that route, but most of the ANCAPs in the malice sphere, like, or not, he's not an ANCAP, but most of the, like, anarchists that I listen to are
maybe I'm wrong, by the way. People could...
Yeah, I mean, I think I think what is often used by the boomer cons and the conservative establishment in general is kind of, they paint anarchism as meme anarchy. And I mean, Dave Smith didn't do himself any favors with the kinds of tweets he was putting out there, right? And Michael Malice is unashamedly ACAB all the time. But I think most of them are saying that if the structures of the police, if they allowed us to have our liberty, aka like our Second Amendment rights, if they allowed us to have our rights to our Fourth Amendment rights and our Fifth Amendment rights, like, then we wouldn't need them.
Well, here's what
that's more the argument. We should go out and kill them and firebomb them, but
correct.
They're unnecessary. That we're taxed to pay for them. We're not provided with the services that we're paying for.
Right.
In fact, they're often harming us through disarmament and spying, and in some cases brutality.
Well, I'll even go downstream. And again, I like Michael Malice a lot, and he's since changed this. It's like, you live in Brooklyn, dude. And he's
trying to get out.
And then this is what I mean. Yeah. So he's changing it now. And he's like, isn't it unfair that I can't have a gun? It's like, well, then fucking get out of there. Do something else. Move to Texas. You can do it. You don't have kids. You don't even have any of the 10%. I will say, because I get it. I really understand practicality. You mentioned it in a appropriate context, which is, hey, the boomer cons don't actually do anything because they have their $100,000 a year job and they have their cars and their stuff. And that's me, by the way. And I hear that. But it's like, at least they have 10% of a reason to not. It's not a good reason. It's not a valid reason, but it's at least it's at least an academic reason. If you're Michael Malice and you're single and you don't have kids and it's like, get the fuck out of there, dude. What are you talking about? You can't be this liberty lover, anarcho-capitalist who I like again, and I'll keep saying this, and say, boo-hoo, I live in Brooklyn. Like, what the fuck is that? Get the fuck out of there. You don't even have any kids in school. You don't have a wife that has a network. You don't have a whatever. And who knows? Maybe I could definitely be wrong. Maybe there's more of a social thing. I get it. Everyone's individual. It's just, maybe it's me being a bitch and being like, oh, all of it. You know what? It probably is me being sensitive and being like, hey, these communists, Jesus. These conservatives are all talk. And it's like, I'm fucking not all talk. I really am not. It's like,
I mean, well, I think, Dan, you're, while you still believe a bit in more cultural authoritarianism, I don't think you're as much in line with the boomer cons and the established conservatives.
So this is where,
I don't think you are.
I talk out of both sides of my mouth because I'm fucking annoying.
Yeah.
I also acknowledge that I'm not.
Yeah.
You know, it's like,
so,
that's
like,
right.
I think you figured out that, like, these dudes aren't going to fix it.
Definitely not, and they're
just
not.
They're gonna keep doing business as usual until they die.
And again, this other so Jerry Callahan, and I'm in the sports world and whatever and blah blah blah. He's a sport, like, the guy is fine and whatever. But it's like, he lives in Boston. He's like, I'm out there, you know, I run out here without, you know, and I put a mask in. Isn't that silly? And like, he's fine with winning the intellectual argument about hypocrisy.
Yeah.
And it's like, but he doesn't do anything about. So that's where Jerry Callahan is a good example of like, you know, and this is where it's different than Kirk Minahan. Is Kirk Minahan, who is like a libertarian, shot his way off the radio and said "fuck you," and then and it's not like the most radical thing in the world,
right?
But he left traditional terrestrial Entercom radio and went to Barstool. And it's not now Barstool's a big institution as well, but it's not terrestrial radio, and it's not legacy media where he was. And Kirk actually stepped up and said, fuck you, literally, like, actually. Talked about trans shit, talked about all this stuff, and got pushed off and burned it down. Yeah. That WEEI, which is a huge, massive legacy radio station, is basically done and over because Kirk drove ratings so high and built that radio station.
Big time.
And he got hamstrung and kneecapped. Yeah. And what he did is said, fuck you, and left and took, I don't know, 70% of the audience. Straight up took it away.
Well, you're seeing that.
And EEI is dead because of it.
Well, I think you're seeing that too with Substack right now in the journalism.
Yeah,
right?
That's correct.
And I think that, like,
Glenn Greenwald, Matt Taibbi.
Yep.
Fuck yeah.
Hell yeah. I think it's important, and this is one thing we've talked a lot about, that these alternate ecosystems are being created, right? Because the one thing I talked about earlier is that, like, how hard the elites and the power systems are trying to stop people from coming to these unifying conclusions, right?
Yeah. Point is, this is why Malice is white-pilled, right? The legacy media
I know what I was gonna say.
is killing itself, and it is allowing oxygen for Substack and Barstool and whatever. And I get it. I know
the efforts of the controllers of the power structures to muddy the waters and turn people against each other is only as strong as their monopoly on entertainment, and
it's really the distribution channels
and the distribution channels. And the more, like, alternative distribution channels you have, like people going on their own, like Minahan, like Substack, like people building their own platforms, the less control they have, right? Especially with all the open source alt tech that is.
Yeah, there's real.
So and I think that's, like you said, it's why Malice is white pilled, and I think he believes more
and
in my idea.
He does, but he's right about this.
Than he does about his actual anarchal.
He does.
His end game. I think
he's more populist than anarchist.
I think, you know.
He talked to the guy. He talked to a guy from NASA the other day.
It was great. Like, I watched some of it. It was great. I think that, like,
and I like Malice.
that balkanization is kind of like the end result of a national populist revolution that we described. One that ends with, like, a founding father like figure deciding to give up, a benevolent dictator deciding to give up all the power. Right?
Yeah.
It's like Machiavelli talked about in the Prince. The best ruler is a benevolent dictator. Right.
There's a real argument.
It would involve. After this revolution, there's still going to be a large part of the population that, like, that wishes Joe Biden was still president, or whoever the president is whenever this happens in 10 years, right?
Fine. Yeah, fine.
And, like, this person would recognize, I can't just, like, rule over these people in, like, an authoritarian
tyrannical way. Like we just had this this people's uprising to stop that, right? Yeah. So what you got to let them break off, right? Further by the fact that like I think the UN and NATO might have some problems with this as well while it's going on. So I would imagine they would be interested in establishing spheres of influence on the East Coast, right? Yeah. They would probably want to do the West Coast too, but logistically speaking, say the U.S. breaks down into Civil War II, Electric Boogaloo, like China's going to be all over that West Coast.
Yeah.
They're going to be all over. Yeah, they're going to be outside Hawaii just waiting. Like no one else is going to the West Coast unless China decides to go.
Hawaii is pretty indefensible.
Yeah, they're done.
Right. We'll seed it. Fine. Maisie Hirono, so fucking have fun.
Let's say it balkanizes, it breaks down. Like I think Malice and people like him realize that that's a much more feasible reality than a completely no authority anarchist system.
Yeah, it also it can't. I don't know if I'm gonna make like the communism was never tried anywhere argument, but it's like what does like let's assume that meme anarchy could exist, which it can't, but let's assume that it could. What's the best analogy? Like people say like Iraq, like derisively, but like
people say like Iraq and sub-Saharan Africa and stuff. Yeah, Malice would say Liechtenstein.
Okay, I don't know that argument at all.
I don't really either. Yeah. But he uses it as an example. I think they're like a constitutional monarchy or something like that.
Okay.
But, essentially, if you look at them in terms of global politics, like they're surrounded by other more powerful states with standing armies.
Yeah.
And they have no standing army, and they haven't been invaded or conquered. The state hasn't descended into lawlessness. Now, I don't really know how that relates to his argument on like domestic policy. It doesn't really seem to focus on it. I don't know. Oceania, the people who started a little state out on...
Well, because this is what, it's like...
No, it's fair. That I don't think there is like a good example.
Yeah.
It does fall into that kind of that fallacy.
Yeah. So, the... I mean, and this goes back to a conversation we had a little earlier, or I guess it was last episode, which is, and it goes back to what he said half an hour ago or whatever, which is, what's more likely and what should we desire more? Which is like Article 5 Convention of States, keep 50 states, but meaningfully reduce the administrative and bureaucratic deep state, or is it, balkanization?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't think there are the mechanisms in place or the popular support to like reform and enforce this Article 5 federalism.
Yeah,
I don't think it exists.
Right.
If anything, like the whole machine right now is seeking to kind of tear that down. And create like a more centralized system. So I don't think we need to like blow everything up and destroy it. But I don't see my rights are not up for discussion, let alone a vote.
So
I don't think people who disagree with me in California or in New York City or in Minnesota right now. I don't think they should be deprived of that either.
Right.
Of
course.
If they want to vote to get rid of the police in Minnesota, do it.
Yeah.
Do it.
Absolutely. Totally.
What right do I, as a guy in Massachusetts, have to tell you what to do with your police force?
Definitely.
Now, people opposed to us won't have a consistent rating on that thing.
Well,
they won't apply that logic consistently.
Well, and the dirty secret is that the conservative take, which is dumb and academic, but seems to trickle down, is inner cities don't want defund the police.
Yeah, there was a piece came out of Vox the other day that was a breakdown of here's what defunding the police looked like, and they looked at a number of areas. And they found that defunding the police led to, I think it was 100 to 300 less police killings, right? Now that's different than the amount of unarmed people killed every year. That's just people killed by the police, period. So most of those people probably had weapons, right? So they reduced the amount of killings by like 1 to 300, and it increased the amount of homicides in these cities by a multitude of thousands.
Yeah, right. Correct. Yeah.
So the cops are definitely killing less people.
Yeah.
But
so
also more people are dying.
Absolutely.
So substantially more people are dying now.
And it's like you have the with the whatever.
Again, the reason why I'm fine with getting rid of the police, I'd only be fine with that if I'm allowed to have fully automatic weapons and body armor and household explosives. And I'm also allowed to buy a plot of land and go and build on it without some asshole from the county inspector board coming and giving me a bunch of shit about it.
Well,
as long as I'm not dumping toxic waste in the river supply and like kidnapping people or like murdering endangered species, whatever, like the minimal amount of oversight.
Yeah.
If I can do all of those things and like I can put up a 10-foot tall fence with barbed wire without having to get special permissions for it, cool, great. Defund your police. Well, I don't care.
And I still...
but I can't do that. And I'm like, in a state like Massachusetts, if someone was to break into my house and I was to get my gun and I was like cornered upstairs and shot them, I would probably still face penalties.
You're totally right.
And if I didn't face like legal penalties, I would certainly face civil liability for that and would be bankrupted for the rest of my life because some asshole broke into my house and tried to hurt me and my family.
And
right?
So
if I'm not allowed to do that, unfortunately, I need the police. When I need someone to come and do violence for me, I'm going to call the tax subsidized violence people.
Yes.
Even if I don't want them around.
Correct.
Because I'm already being extorted
yes.
for the money that's paying them
right.
against my will. And even if I wasn't, the measures that I would need to protect myself are illegal. So in that, I'm essentially a prisoner of the state.
Yes.
I'm going to rely on their subsidized violence.
Well,
until I'm able to protect myself to an adequate degree.
And that may be, and here's where I think it's appropriate, and it seems, and I get it, and I'd like to see. There's kind of like the sole, black Republicans and white, whatever it is, rednecks or something. I think it's that. The argument is yes, poverty and socioeconomic conditions directionally point both ways, with lower class whites and lower class blacks behave more similarly. That they behave identically, basically.
Yeah.
Ghetto culture started with white people.
Yeah.
I'll put it to you that way. But outside, I only say that as a disclaimer. And I say that as a disclaimer because where it seems that the formula works is rural police don't seem to be as federalized. They seem to be more a part of the fabric of the community. They seem to be neighbors that you know on a first name basis. And they seem to be helpful because the scenario that you just described, when you need to recruit sanctioned violence, that actually does help.
Yeah,
you actually do want to see the police. If you are in whatever, my geography is not great, but if you're in Des Moines, Idaho, or if you're in a rural county outside of Des Moines, the likelihood that you are actually okay in a panic scenario with cops showing up is far greater than you are in Chicago. Because in Chicago, you have a federalized, militarized police enforcement agency of the state. Whereas in your rural setting and context, and not always, and it's different, and there are also bullshit ghetto disabuses of police power also. But having said that, there seems to be a workable rubric, which is if I coach fucking soccer with my cop neighbor, that seems to be a scenario that libertarians and anarchists can be okay with because they're also part of they may as well be an armed citizen.
Yeah, I mean, it's more than just efficiency. It's also about accountability, right?
Right.
These people, it's important to recognize these are flesh and blood people.
Yes, absolutely correct.
They have to live and go to the grocery store and go to the sports games and take their kids to soccer and do the same thing with judges, the same thing with lawyers, the same thing with politicians, the same thing with doctors and health officials. And the more removed they are from the consequences of their actions in whatever that field is, the less concerned they're going to be about it. Right?
Absolutely.
I highly doubt Tony Fauci in wherever his office is was really that worried about people who's being mad about their businesses shutting down.
Right.
What's that person going to do? Get on a bus, go halfway across the country and try to shoot Tony Fauci?
Yeah.
No, he's probably just going to like hang himself in his garage when he can't afford his kids' braces.
Yeah, he doesn't, and he doesn't.
And Tony Fauci might feel bad about that, but he doesn't have to go to the grocery store where
Correct.
that guy's wife goes with his kids.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
The local cops do have to do that. They do see the
Right.
results of like their law enforcement.
Absolutely.
If you're a cop, a newly recruited cop to Chicago who saw an ad on Facebook for an $80,000 a year job after 18 months, and you live 2 counties over, and you're driving in an hour, you're not going to see any of these people again. Even if you lived in that city, you're probably not going to see these people again.
Correct.
Because there's so many millions of people in them.
And,
right?
and this should be the unifying, when people talk about...
And as we talked about, people aren't like... Not a lot of people have like a ingrained set of morals or principles that they live by with conviction, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So people every day will do something that they don't really think is right because it's the most expedient or because they think it's necessary.
All the time.
All the time, no matter what. And it's not that I think that these people will like going to suddenly, drive an hour into work and they're going to start like brutalizing people and shooting kids
right.
and shutting down businesses and not caring about it. But like it's a lot easier to sleep at night if you have a fat paycheck and you don't have to see any of the results of what you've done.
Correct.
Even if you know it's wrong. A lot of people can get over the fact that they're doing things that are wrong
all the time
if the results are quote unquote worth it.
Yes.
Right? And it's harder for it to be worth it if you have to look every day at the people that you're fucking over.
That's right. Yeah, and it's why it's part of this.
And you know what? It's by design.
Oh, well, you took the words out of my mouth. Yeah. It's part of the divide and conquer media narrative around defund the police, because what we could probably unify over is localizing, defederalizing, and resulting and having de-escalation techniques actually become more standard operating procedure. Those are things we can rally around. But what defund the police devolves into, is stupid idiot progressives saying, take away everybody's guns and take away all the money and hamstring a policeman's ability to actually enforce homicidal people. And what boomer dummies say is, well, actually, don't defund the police, increase funding to police because there's not enough money to be trained. And it's like, that's a fucking stupid argument too. I hate that argument. That argument infuriates me more than even the progressive argument, because it's like, you can't say you're a conservative and you want small government and also say like, well, the police there's not enough money for the police to train them. It's like, that's fucking stupid too. And it's this divide and conquer thing is working on me because I see that and it makes me angry. But the thing that we should be talking about is, again, defederalizing, demilitarizing. And again, what we can all come around with, there's no such thing as police brutality if we get rid of, the drug war. There's no such thing as police brutality if we get rid of, process crimes. There's no such thing as police brutality when we don't have inspection stickers. Like, there's no such thing. It doesn't happen. But that's a unifying thing. And what the Marxists say is defund the police and replace it with our Stasi.
With moral authoritarianism.
Correct. Yeah. And what the right says is it makes them flip upside down and do mental gymnastics by saying, actually, we need this public sector union to have more money. It's like, that's so wrong. So it's so brilliant. It's a psyop fucking initiative by the media and by the deep state and by the racism industrial complex and by the military industrial complex to say defund the police.
And what I'm saying is it's all the same thing.
It is all the same thing.
It's all the same thing.
Yes.
The media is run by former intelligence agents and State Department workers.
Right.
They are stenographers for state intelligence agencies. They just uncritically publish whatever they're handed to by government organizations. And they ruthlessly hunt, smear, and slander anyone who attempts to do critical journalism. like Aaron Matei, who fucking debunked Russiagate,
right?
Or Glenn Greenwald,
or Matt
Taibbi,
yeah.
There's really just the same fucking 3 journalists that we go through.
They're the only
and I say that,
but they're so good. Though,
and people say, "Well, is there really anybody else?" I'm like, okay, I guess Michael Tracy. You can add him in there.
I don't even know who that is, but probably.
He's.
I'll take your word for it.
You told me about the liberal who wrote the good book you wanted me to read.
Jonah Goldberg.
Yeah, he seems to me like that. Michael Tracy's seems more liberal to me.
Yeah.
But so Aaron Matei is a hard leftist who used to work for Democracy Now. So I like his stuff. It's all the same thing.
Yeah.
The
like defund the police came from the FBI. It came from the FBI.
Probably.
It had to have. It so perfectly captures what we're talking about meaning the astroturfed uniparty narrative.
The feds,
that it had to have come from
the feds have been infiltrating leftist organizations going back pre-Vietnam, right?
Yes.
Like FBI had lots of operations to infiltrate leftist organizations and make them seem way more radical and way more crazy.
The Weather Underground, the Black Panthers,
in the same way. After 9/11, they started leading people down the Primrose Path to terrorist attacks with vans full of fake explosives, right?
Yep.
And now we're seeing a lot of stories about how a lot of the leaders and prominent members of these alt-right militia groups are feds, right? That a lot of members of the Boogaloo Boys are feds.
Yep.
And
Michael Malice is a fed.
Right. It wouldn't be too far off to say, okay, they probably just never stopped infiltrating these groups. They
definitely haven't.
Been continuing, and this is something that people on the left said until Trump broke their brains.
I know.
And this is what they said every time a protest turned into a riot. Every time an Occupy turned into a fucking heroin. What's the bongo
circle,
fucking circle?
Yeah.
Is that these are what was the term? What did they call it?
The people who are spies.
Spies, double agents, agent provocateurs.
Agent
provocateurs.
Good job.
They called them agent provocateurs, and they were feds, and they worked for the state. And they just stopped
saying
it. Yes. Instead, they went with this is a peaceful protest. They don't even bother to have spies infiltrate it and make it look crazy.
Because they don't. Yeah, that's right. Yes.
And then have the state crack down on them. Now they have spies infiltrate and make them look crazy.
Yeah.
And they just have their Mockingbird media puppets say that no, there actually wasn't any violence.
Correct.
And it was mostly peaceful.
Yes.
Right?
You have that Chiron.
They're like,
CNN
they're like, court cases are really expensive, and then if we go to trial, there'll be all these court documents that people like Julian Assange will release decades later.
Yes.
Why don't we just say there was no violence?
I know you have that CNN Chiron, which is, again,
and then
everything's on fire and it says mostly peaceful.
And then people on the internet will get really pissed, and then a few of them will shit in Capitol Hill, and then we can throw them in prison for 10 years
forever.
And then we'll have funding to do whatever we want forever.
We can shoot them in the fucking
and
head.
We can just spy on people. They're like, well, no, we're not gonna crack down on them with draconian penalties. We're gonna waive their charges, and rile up people on the other side until they do some fucking redneck terrorist attack like Oklahoma City, right?
White privilege.
So much of Timothy McVeigh's
white privilege
manifesto was about that shit, dude.
White privilege is a fucking CIA plant.
Yeah,
it just is.
Yeah, I mean the CIA, and this goes back. I'm telling you, man, it's all the same. It goes back to the corporations. The CIA, or the precursor to the CIA, and all the other, and then them afterwards.
The OSS.
The OSS, and later the CIA. They were all involved in the corporations in South and Central America.
Right.
They've been involved ever since their inception in working hand in hand with mega corporations to protect profits and U.S. interests.
Right.
Which are usually the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Oh, they are. That's right. They're one and the same.
It's just I heard the other day someone on TV said, well, people say, oh, how do you predict this? And he says, I'm not predicting, these are all reruns.
Yeah, right.
These are all reruns. Right. And if you're really old, or if you just watch a lot of stuff, you're gonna see these same narratives repeating, and you're gonna see the same state actors who are involved in it. It's a remarkable web.
Yeah, I mean, what I'd love to do, and maybe we're going an hour and a half, but
I'm probably gonna cut out the 10 minutes about my weird ancient alien pyramid anyway.
I don't think so. That's fine. I liked it. What would be interesting is and this is like more fun, is like how like was Hitler real?
Yeah,
you know what I mean,
dude. So, all right, so
like what?
I like this. We
like
have a
what,
good.
Like
we have
what
a
is
good.
What is that?
So we have a good.
I'm not Holocaust.
So my friend mentioned to me. My friend mentioned to me that we have a good rhythm of we go really long and then at the end we always talk about something weird and crazy.
And he was, and I'm not Holocaust.
So let's talk about some of the weirder theories about Hitler.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So one of the more mainstream weird theories about Hitler is that he
was Hitler just a short guy from Wisconsin?
No,
was
there's
Hitler
a theory that he was a plant of the elites, right? To do two things, right? To kill off a lot of
Sirhan?
Something like that. No, he was a plant by the elites, right?
Or, what's his name? Oswald. That's who I meant.
Yeah, whether or not knowingly, whether or not he directly took orders from them, or he was put in the right place at the right time and doing the right things, whatever. And to kill off a lot of their competition in Europe, right? But more importantly,
yes, sure,
but yes. But more importantly, to ruin
the Soviet Union.
The idea of nationalism. To lay the seeds.
Oh,
to lay the
that's
seeds.
Crazy.
To lay the seeds of globalization.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And these theories involve a fair amount of Holocaust denial.
There's some grindness.
So I would just like to say I do not endorse these theories.
Yes.
I enjoy them like I enjoy watching Alex Jones. I don't think everything he says is true.
Absolutely.
I don't think most of what he says is true, but some of it's very entertaining, right? So these theories involve a fair amount of Holocaust denial. And the idea is that Hitler was a plant.
There's some Louis Farrakhan here.
Exactly. I actually learned this from hanging out with the Hotep.
They
taught me all about it.
Oh, man.
And that he was designed to take out a lot of their competition and to ruin nationalism and the people who believe in these theories who are like more white nationalists. I know about a lot of these people because Malice wrote about them in his book, The New Right.
Okay,
he talked
I do want to read that.
He talked to like literal neo-Nazis and stuff like that. And they think that not only was it just to ruin nationalism, but also the idea of ethnic nationalism.
Right.
Forever,
Yes.
Right?
Sure. Yeah.
So that's a fun Hitler theory. Another theory.
That is fun.
Another theory is that that's not what happened, and that after the war, the elites got him out. But other people think that the elites wanting to tie up loose ends didn't get him out, and they abandoned him in his little bunker, and he killed himself, or they had him killed. Right?
Sure.
The people differ on that. The people who believe Hitler
Ava Braun worked for the State Department?
Something like that.
Fuck yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That's so great.
Yeah.
That's so great.
Yes. And that
Ava Braun was from Iowa and
also it's that these same people wanted the idea of global Bolshevism and at that point it becomes Stalinism, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And that they were also interested in taking out the country that had shown to be the most effective at using national sentiment as a bulwark against communism, right? Because Hitler would have never came to power if it wasn't for the communists and the anti-fascists in the 20s and 30s, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And that was connected to them helping FDR come to power in his fucking mad dash for complete authoritarian leftism in the United States.
Yeah, and you have like the William Jennings. You have all
William
of
Bryan
this.
Jennings.
Yeah, you have all of this. Like
that was the gold standard guy.
You have all of this like nationalist, populist progressivism that admired National Socialism and like the wartime socialism pieces of Nazi Germany. And again, what we talk, we shouldn't gloss over the role of the religion of the state when you talk about trains running on time, etc. I mean, this is what Jonah, we mentioned in a second, what Jonah Goldberg, who's like now, total globalist cuck, but wrote a fucking excellent book about this, which is American progressivism was far more sympathetic and mirror gazing at National Socialism than we're made to believe.
Oh yeah, I mean, Teddy, they're
the same.
I mean, we're bullmoosebroadcast, right? At Teddy Roosevelt Bull Moose Party, he was an isolationist.
Yeah, absolutely.
The isolationist policies of the early 20th century like continued up until pretty much Pearl Harbor.
Yes.
Support for the war was like under 50% of Americans up until Pearl Harbor, and it jumped to like 70%.
Exactly.
So there's a not only like a ideological argument for that, but there's like a historical precedent.
And again,
major figures in the United States helped to fund and supply the Nazis.
Absolutely. I mean, completely and totally. And this is where like those lines get blurred and get really wonky. And again, I'll say it. I mean, don't listen to. I mean, he's fine, but whatever. Don't listen to Jonah Goldberg now. He'll just annoy the fuck out of you if you have a brain. But read liberal fascism.
Yeah.
Definitely. Like
real quick, I don't want to wrap up. Second sexy Hitler, not sexy, but second weird Hitler conspiracy. This one relies on even more Holocaust denial.
Terrific.
Okay, so, I believe this one even less.
Okay, yeah.
Just to put that on record.
Yeah.
Was that Hitler, through his occult studies, and the Nazis in general, through all of their weird occult stuff and experimentation.
Indiana Jones.
Last
Crusade. Yeah.
Discovered the real secrets of like the Earth, whether that's
is this the Ancient Aliens guy? What's that guy?
This is like Ancient Aliens. This is like Ancient
Costos Flapodatos.
Yeah, that guy's the coolest name.
Yes,
and that they discovered the secret to our being or our lineage or whatever.
Sure.
And they discovered that the Earth
and they were right.
is hollow. And that's why the Nazis went to Antarctica.
Right.
And it wasn't actually Hitler who got killed in the bunker. Now, the conspiracy theorists differ. Now, some of them say that Hitler really was a bad guy who wanted to kill Jews and homosexuals and everybody else, but he kind of stumbled into this occult stuff.
Yeah.
And he
I believe that, by the way.
And I believe he's a terrible man who really did try to kill everyone.
Okay, me too.
I really do. I'm talking about this from the perspective of these crazy people who think he went into the alien underground.
Yeah.
Right? And that when he discovered this stuff through occults, he decided to abandon his whole Holocaust project.
So got in the way.
And get in his cool new Nazi flying saucers,
right.
Fly them to Antarctica, where they had found the entrance to Agartha, which is an ancient hollow earth super advanced civilization.
This one's not as fun. I don't like this as much. I like Hitler as a Fed way better than this. This is stupid. I don't like this one. This is dumb.
And
I don't like
this.
And now, Hitler as a Fed is way better. And if Hitler is from Bangor, Maine, I'm all in. I know if Hitler's flying saucers, I'm fucking out.
No, it was Hitler. Hitler was from Europe, but he was like funded by like the Rothschilds and all those people.
Okay.
The real Illuminati, not the shitty American new Illuminati.
Okay.
But anyways, at the end of the story, there's another little bit. So they go and they go on the ground, whatever. They flew, they disappeared in Antarctica. Well, in 1947, Admiral Byrd was a U.S. guy who was doing an Antarctic exploration or whatever.
Spelunking.
And he was flying his plane, like, because they had like the biplanes or whatever.
Sure, right.
And he's flying it with his radio guy.
Word.
And they both testified that unidentified spacecraft. That initially all the controls seized, the engine seized, everything turned off, but the plane kept flying. Right?
Sick.
Right? And that about 30 minutes later, sometime later, an unidentified craft, an alien craft, flew next to them. And they started communicating with them through their radio.
This is stupid. I don't like this.
No, dude, he testified to all of this.
I don't give
He was an admiral.
So what?
He was an admiral.
Like this Admiral Faber guy, like nowadays.
Yeah, he's an admiral.
All right,
and anyways, he says that they then...
He's a Fed too.
They then took him to one of their like outposts and told them, you shouldn't be here. Your people aren't allowed to be here.
Yeah.
The last people here were the Nazis.
Not so
They're
nice.
still here.
They're still here.
You guys can't be here. Get the fuck out. And when you're all ready, we'll let you know and you can come back.
Yeah.
And he went and he testified, and naturally, the entire government said, "You're fucking nuts."
Yeah, correct.
You're fucking insane.
Yeah, sure.
There are no Arctic Nazis.
There
are certainly no alien Aryans in flying saucers.
It's not like fucking GoldenEye where you just change skins and now you're in like parkas.
He went to his grave. Claiming that story was true.
Everyone looks like they're in.
That is what has spawned this whole subset of alien Antarctic Hitler double agent theories.
I don't like that one. I like
the first one. I led with the better one.
It's way better.
Yeah,
it's way more fun.
One.
It's way more fun.
Hitler, Agent Hitler, FBI.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, yeah, dude. Because again, it's like, and I get it, and I don't believe it, and whatever, and all that. I whatever. It's fun because we're having fun on this. It's allowed. You're allowed to have fun still somehow. But it's like, the WMD thing was bullshit. The fucking, even, and I get it, 9/11 happened was bullshit. And all that. Yes, correct. Yes, it's all bullshit.
The ship that Israel blew up.
Yeah, like
what was it? USS Liberty, I think it was called.
The
Pearl Harbor was bullshit because they knew it was going to happen and they didn't do anything about it.
Right, and it's like, the 9/11 stuff where it's like, whatever. The Saudis are now our best friends. That's weird. That's weird.
Oh, geez, a bunch of guys with known terrorist connections who had a hideout right next to and used a Safeway that was right next to a CIA post. They just didn't know anything about them, and then they found one of their passports intact on the ground underneath the towers.
And
yeah, man, that sounds like totally. That sounds super legit.
Gets real goofy. Gets real goofy. But the point is, like, the goofiness, why does it? Because I even hear, and I still believe it, and we could maybe I could maybe, like, flash my 10-year-old neocon badge and be like, hey, there is evil in the world, and there is probably a role for America to do something about it. Probably. But then now I'm like, no, there isn't. It's all fake.
Yeah.
There's
just no credibility. Like, you can't, like, when the government says this terrible thing is happening, this is why it's happening, this is why we need to do something about it, they're never telling the truth.
They're always lying.
I think most people, regardless of where they're on in the spectrum, except for, like, the really radical isolationist types, would have that opinion. If they were like, if you said to them, do you think that if we aren't in foreign war and there's a genocide happening in a country, like just the state, this guy won an election, and then he did a coup and he took power, and now he's literally just murdering all of his enemies.
The Hitler thing, if Hitler wasn't a Fed.
Yes. People would be like, yeah, let's do something about it. Especially if you're America, where you're the country who's the most suited to throw its weight around.
And like,
right?
and intellectually in a world that exists, I probably would feel that way too.
And it's not just Americans.
But I can't.
It's not just Americans who feel this way. It's half of Europe. It's why they let us. It's why they let us do all of their defense. You know what I mean? So it's not just Americans.
It's everyone except Russia and China.
Pretty much everyone in the world is like, hey, you guys are like the strongest, and you have like a lot of money and a lot of stuff, and like you have a lot of military bases, which we're not really cool with you having them, but we're glad you have one in our country.
Yes. And you have a ton of these 6 foot tall fucking savages who are bigger and faster, and we have a martial culture, and you all know how to use guns, and you're all raised on sports and competition, and you're all able to run, and you're all pretty, even though your sick people are really sick and fat, but your healthy people are freaks.
And you only do a very reasonable amount of war crimes. You do a very I mean that. I mean that too. If you do on a macro level, comparatively, you guys do a very reasonable amount of war crimes.
Yes.
So we would really like it if you could come over here and stop these people from killing all these other people.
Yes.
I don't think most people would disagree with that. The thing is, like, here's a good example. The first Iraq War, the girl they got to come in and testify about babies being killed in incubators by Saddam's forces was later found they had completely faked, and she was the daughter of an ambassador to, I think, Kuwait. They fake name, fake story, totally fake, completely engineered it, and while they were doing that, they had sanctions in place that led to a famine that killed 500,000 people. Right?
Well,
the problem is when they actually say, "Oh, all these people are being genocided, we have to kill them." They're full of shit. They're just totally, completely full of shit.
Like, is the Uyghur Muslim thing in China real?
Dude, I don't know because I'm not a China hawk because I don't think international conflict is good. Right. But I think we need to someone needs to check Chinese expansion. And no one's doing it. Mitch McConnell's wife is a Chinese lady who's
Fang is
super rich. Fang is fucking all the Democrats. The Chinese expansion is real, and it's not just them flexing in the South China Sea and flexing on Taiwan. It's them buying up real estate and businesses.
They're taking over Africa,
and utilities. Africa, getting mineral rights from everywhere else.
having said that, going on...
Are the Uyghurs real?
Going into lefty Twitter and like the Jimmy Dore universe and all the people he has on, and some of them are like apologists for the CCP who want to ignore the terrible shit they do to talk about, well, they've improved the standard of living for the average Chinese so much, and they have so much access
They're
to
okay with struggle sessions because they're okay with struggle sessions.
Correct.
Yeah.
And they think that it's worth giving up rights and liberty to have that. Right? That's the problem with the super lefty socialists.
They care about healthcare.
Now, where they get things right are the real ones who want to actually criticize the intelligence state.
Yes.
Right? and for those people, they say the Uyghur Muslims is another intelligence state operation to convince people that something that's bad is much worse than it is.
Right.
And that a lot of the prominent stories...
can justify war.
Yeah.
I mean...
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that a lot of the prominent stories coming out of there about the Uyghur atrocities have been proved to be unreliable at best.
Is that true?
I don't remember specifically what ones. But, every few months there's a new story about how brutal it is. Now, they also point out what's weird is that these things... This intelligence state is making these stories, but then they're not actually putting any checks on Chinese expansion.
We trade with them until Trump. But, I
mean, Biden removed the executive order banning Chinese people from buying up electric utilities.
This is what I mean.
If anything, there can be an argument made that people in both parties are helping China. So it doesn't really compute that they would be making fake stories about Uyghur atrocities.
I mean, the NBA loves China.
Exactly. And if the corporations, the entertainment industry, and the government are pro-China, and the news media are not looking into the actual things China is doing, like the tangible things, it makes me question as to why they would be making up stories about the Uyghur genocides and the rapes and the organ harvesting and forced sterilization,
murdering female children and whatever.
Because it just doesn't add up with, like, if they wanted war with China, they would be doing things against China instead of just running stories about how mean they are.
Well, there's the other side of this.
Maybe they're trying to raise enough support to then start doing stuff.
Well,
but I don't buy it.
Yeah, and there's two pieces to this.
But no, the Uyghurs aren't real. They're not being genocided. They're all feds.
This is the kind of like...
They're not. They're holograms. Tupac is still alive and he invented the hologram for the Uyghur Muslims.
And maybe we end on this because we're going. I think I'm losing steam.
Yeah.
The last thing I'll say is I wonder if what the elites don't want. The elites no longer want war. The elites want Brave New World.
Yes, they don't want...
the elites don't want to lie about Uyghur Muslims to stoke the military-industrial complex. They want to not talk about Uyghur Muslims so that a one-world government can not kill you, but keep you eating your soma and living in your pod and working 16 hours a day.
Yeah, they want you consuming.
And I know this is they want you to be happy they actually do want you to be happy.
Yeah.
Because being happy makes you fat and lazy and makes you and allows them to live a better lifestyle themselves.
Yeah. Well,
they want you to watch Netflix on the 8. They want you to work. They don't want to work you 16 hours a day. They want everyone working 8 hours a day, watching Netflix for the other 8 hours a day, and sleeping the rest of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so war is not the war used to be the methodology that the elites would use to control a population, to conscript them, to get them to fight, to get them rabble-roused, etc. Correct, direct force. Mm-hmm. Now it isn't.
Warfare
now
it's evolved. That direct force is the third generational warfare. We're at fifth generational warfare.
Yeah.
It's every day when you go on your Twitter feed, when you turn on the news, when you watch a movie, you are in warfare. You're being psychologically, emotionally manipulated.
You're wearing a mask.
Yeah. From the minute
the
minute you wake up,
from
the minute you step out of your house, from the minute you get in your car, and the minute you get to work, and the minute you go home, you are being conditioned.
Yep.
for compliance.
There's a shit ton of this.
Yeah.
All right, I think we should end. I'm exhausted.
Yeah,
that was
I'm
good.
done.
All right, good job.
Yeah, that was good.